In security matters, the National Defense Authorization Act. This past Wednesday, the Senate easily cleared the $612 billion defense policy bill. It would raise military pay, overhaul the retirement system, and make changes to the acquisition process. President Obama says he will veto the NDAA because it keeps Guantanamo open and pads the overseas contingency account with an extra $38 billion. For more, I'm joined by Erika McCann, Director of Federal Procurement for ITAPS. Erika, you applauded this bill in an op-ed published this week, mostly because it changes the way DoD buys information technology. How so?
Well, this bill contains over 80 provisions that really change the way the Department of Defense and other agencies, quite frankly, are able to bring in new innovation into what their missions are. There are particular items around commercial item acquisition, as well as regulatory reforms that the IT industry thinks is critical to achieving national security and allowing the Department of Defense to keep their technological edge.
Now, what kind of impact would the NDAA have on the private sector?
Well, I think for the companies that do business with the government, many of them also have other clients and other customers that are more commercial in nature. Some of them only spend maybe 3 or 5% of their business area focused on the public sector market. And because of that, and because of the innovations that they're able to develop with their R&D efforts, the government really wants to leverage what those innovations are and bring them into government. So these provisions in this bill are so critical for the government to be able to bring in those technologies and those commercial items and include them as parts and pieces of much more larger programs at the department, so that they're able to really feel the full effect of what the innovations are in the private sector.
The bill's future, however, is pretty cloudy. The Senate approved it 70-27, but Democrats promised to sustain a presidential veto. Let's get a little history lesson courtesy of Military Times. The Defense Authorization Bill has been signed into law for more than 50 consecutive years, one of the few bipartisan bright spots in an increasingly divided Congress. Hill staffers noted that during that stretch, the measure has been vetoed only 4 times, each time over issues that lawmakers were able to quickly and easily correct. What about this year? Is there an easy fix, or will this issue get wrapped up in the larger spending debate?
Well, I don't think it's unprecedented for the Commander-in-Chief to veto this bill. However, I think that the provisions that have been put in place to achieve true acquisition reform at the department must find a way to sustain themselves, and they need to be made into law one way or another. It's certainly possible for the Congress and the President to work these differences out, and none of the differences are really around some of these contracting issues anyways.
Erika, the House and Senate Armed Services Committee started this process well over a year ago. How do they view this fight?
Well, this is a project that they have been pouring their hearts into for the past year or more. This is something that takes a lot of bipartisan support from. They've worked very hard with the stakeholders in DoD and within the private sector to make sure that some of these reforms are able to be implemented. And so for them, it's really an important measure for them to be able to say that these provisions are going to be made into law. And certainly for the private sector, we share that same perspective.
Erika McCann, Director of Federal Procurement for ITAPS. Thanks for the update, Erika.
Thank you.